Hi, this is Johannes Krieger with senshi-knives. Since I saw the Tensegrity design for the first time, I was curious if I could build a small table that would not only look fancy and filigree, but would also be able to support a lot of weight. So, in this video, I hope I'll be able to build a Tensegrity side table that I can sit on. But because that would be very boring as a punchline, me just sitting down on a big stool, let's say I will build a Tensegrity table that I can dance on. After I spent a few hours designing the table, I built all the parts you can see here lying on the bench that are needed to assemble the table. But before I will show you the assembly process, let's see how I built these parts. And let's start off with the most important part, the arches that will support all the weight. First off, I cut an arch from this piece of plywood as a template to ensure a uniform bend of the arches. Now let's go to the forge and start hammering away. I start out with 12mm round stock that I'm texturing by hitting it over and over again while alternating the angles slightly. You can see me here using two different kinds of round stock. One is a plain round stock, the other one is a reinforcement steel, but that won't make any difference in the end. After I straightened out the textured rods, I start the process of heating them up really evenly so they bend nicely. So, after they are done, let's leave them to cool down and start with the brackets which will attach the arches to the bottom and top slab. And because I'm a little bit lazy right now, let's just hit it a few times and be done with it. The next step is to cut off the excess material of the arches. Now it's time to marry the brackets and the arches. For that, I built another template to emulate the thickness and width of the top and bottom plate. Having an extra pair of hands here comes in very handily. I used the forge to blacken the bracket screws and to remove the very ugly color shifts from the welding, so it fits the arches. After I ground in grooves in the apex points of the arches, I can continue with the most important steel wire in the build. This wire is exactly 10.5 cm long, and I will secure it with 2 press clamps each. I will show this process in detail later. And with that, the arches are finished. So let's continue with the top and bottom slabs. For these, I will use some 5 cm thick beech board, from which I cut 2 32 by 32 cm squares. In the bottom one I drill 8 mm holes all the way through in every corner, and from the bottom side carve out much more material with a 25 mm Forstner bit. The top one only gets some 4 cm deep 6 mm holes in every corner. With the help of some copper markers, I mark the holes for the attachment of the arches. I specifically only use the long grain side for this to ensure that no end grain will be put under the maximum tension. After these holes are drilled, it's off to the sanding process. I will save you from that, but let me tell you, it took me about 2 hours and it wasn't fun at all. To finish the slabs, I need to screw in the hang screws in the top one and cut off the excess material, so I'm left with about a 5mm thread. And so the slabs are done. And now for the last part, the outside strings, which will hold the entire construction together. For these I will start with the 8 rings that I will use to attach the strings to. I cut from this old water pipe 10 1cm thick rings to account for some losses along the way. Now I throw them in some muriatic acid to etch off the zinc, which would cause toxic fumes. I also threw in some M8 nuts I will need later. I start the ring forging process with squeezing the pre-ring together. I continue with stretching the ring open on the horn of the anvil and facetting the surface. To finish the rings off, I have to add a little flat spot on the outside. Now I just need to do this 9 more times and I'm done. The next step involves welding the M8 nuts to the rings. For this, I need a hole in my table through which I put a M8 rod, which holds the nut in place and neatly allows me to hook up my negative pole to my workpiece. Now it's time to hook up 2 rings to each other with the steel cable. For that, I need the rings, the steel cable, press clamps and fitting thimbles. Because I need the steel cables to be exactly the same length, and also a very exact one, I use 2 screws in the table to tension the cable on them. First off, I put on a thimble on the ring and then fiddle the cable through a clamp and pull the cable really tight to then press the clamp shut and make it look nice. I repeat that process for the second side, only that I tighten the cable between the two screws in the table. I like to clean up the excess steel cable with the Dremel tool to avoid sharp corners where I could cut myself. I need to be very careful here to not nick the main cable. After I just hacked this M8 rod in 5cm sections up, I screw them into one side of each cable and they are done. Now, after I showed you how I built every single part of this table, I'm ready to assemble them. First, I screw down the arcs onto the slab where I need to look out to not scratch the finish on the brackets. I put the table on its side, because this way it stays in the final position and I can start putting on the cables. First, I screw in the 3 nuts in the hang screws before I put the M8 rods through the holes in the bottom and tighten them with a nut and a washer down. After they are fixated, I can tighten them down real hard to get the entire system under tension. And with that, the table is assembled and only needs the wood finish. For that, I first use some mineral oil to soak the wood before I finish with some furniture wax that I polish on. And it's finished. I'm very happy how it came out looking in the end. I think it still looks filigree enough, while also it should be able to hold a person. The entire weight put on the table is applied to the center wire, while the balancing is assured by the outside cables, which deny the table from swinging either way. So, now for the final question. Can I dance on this table? So, the clear answer is no. No, I definitely can't dance on this table. But it can't be blamed for that. So, there we are at the end of this video. If you liked it, please express that. If you didn't, please express that as well. If you have any feedback or questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. And as always, have a nice one. Bye.